Representative Ehlers of Meridian, Idaho, chairs the Ways and Means Committee, as well as sits on the Business and Revenue and Taxation Committee. He joins us this week in the studio to discuss his tax conformity bill and the effects that will have on the everyday Idaho citizen. And again, thank you so much, Representative Ehlers, for joining us in the studio today. So the first question we wanted to ask you about is the tax conformity bill that you proposed in the legislature. And just to give us a brief overview, can you tell us what is included in that bill and give us kind of an explanation of what tax conformity is?
Yeah, so tax conformity happens every year, and normally it's not this big of a deal. But because Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill in July and had a lot of provisions in there, and they made it retroactive back to the beginning of 2025. That created a lot more complexity and work for us here in Idaho with tax conformity. It's important for taxpayers because if we don't conform, then you basically have to keep two sets of books and do your taxes twice. You have to have a whole separate code for the federal government, and then when you go to do the state, you'd have to restart your taxes and do a lot more work. So by conforming, it makes it a lot easier for the taxpayer. And in this particular bill, it conforms to the provisions that Trump had in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So things like no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, an increased deduction for senior citizens. So a lot of benefits for your average taxpayer and your average Idahoan.
And in the committee hearing, there were some questions about how you came to the total cost, the $155 million that was projected. Could you just tell us how you came to those projections and how that will affect the overall budget or spending in the state?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I've spent months and hours digging through all the different projections to come up with that one. So it's a midpoint basically between the Tax Commission's estimate on the high end and the low end. It's also the same number, the 155, that the governor took in his recommended budget. And it tracks really well with what some other independent sources have looked at when they analyzed Idaho and thought what the impact might be to the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it also is relatively speaking, compared to other states and their estimates for conformity this year, it tracks right around that number. So that helped give me confidence that that could be a reasonable estimate for Idaho.
And what would these tax cuts and other aspects of this bill look like for the everyday Idaho citizen? What would it look like this year and in the fiscal years to come?
Yeah, so one thing that's really important that we did is made this, like the One Big Beautiful Bill, retroactive back to 2025. So when you file your taxes right now, you can get those benefits in Idaho. I think, based on my calculations, that an average senior citizen could get somewhere around $300 to $400 additional in their pocket back. A waitress, could get hundreds of dollars. Somebody working overtime, probably hundreds of dollars. So I think this is real tax dollars and tax savings back in the pockets of an average Idahoan.
And thank you so much, Representative Ehlers, for your time. We just have one final question for you. With a 3% cut asked from the governor and potentially more cuts to come as recommended by the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, how would you say, what's your priority in passing this tax conformity bill, and how would that affect the budget?
Yes. So I think it's important to get this conformity bill passed for people that are filing their taxes right now so they can get this benefit right now and not have to wait, till next year or down the road, especially because so many of these provisions sunset or expire in 4 years. So I don't want Idahoans to miss out on this year's and only get 3 of the years of benefit, not 4. In terms of the overall budget picture, as we've analyzed this and looked at projected revenues and expenditures and where we think things are going, tax conformity still keeps a balanced budget. It still leaves a positive ending balance on the bottom line. And so I know that we have to look at some other decisions around specific budgets and specific cuts, but tax conformity doesn't specify what those cuts and budgets are going to look like, but it does fit into the big picture.
And thanks so much again for joining us. I just want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything else you want to say about the bill or anything else that you feel like I didn't ask you about? You're open to share anything else that you'd like.
Yeah, I appreciate the public's interest in this. I do think it's going to be a benefit for the average Idahoans. And one of the reasons why it's so important and there's a sense of urgency is we need to get this settled so that people can understand how to file their taxes this year and the impact it's going to have. So hopefully it gets through really quickly, and then Idahoans can start filing their taxes and receiving these benefits.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining us, Representative Ehlers. We really appreciate it.